Hello, we are Laia, Anna, Coral, and Carla, and this is our second language acquisition research project presentation. This is a table of contents we've made. First, we will present the participants, then we will comment on the results, and finally, we will talk about the conclusions we've come up with. On the one hand, the first participant we have analyzed is a 12-year-old Chinese boy that was born in Catalonia, and he speaks Chinese at home, and he is fluent both in Spanish and Catalan. He started learning English at school when he was 5 years old. At the same time, he started attending an English academy. In total, he spends approximately 5 hours per week learning English.
On the other hand, our second participant is much older than participant 1, as he is 68 years old. We were informed that his mother tongue is Spanish, but he is fluent when using Catalan to communicate too. Participant 2 had previous knowledge regarding English, as he had been in contact with this language during his last job before he retired. However, he did not devote time to the study of the English language until he retired, which happened 4 years ago. In addition, he attended an official language school for 3 years, where he obtained an A2 level. We have structured our analysis in the following main blocks from linguistics.
First, in the phonology section, we have analyzed their speech from a segmental and suprasegmental perspective. On the one hand, at a segmental level, both participants have in general a good pronunciation of English because they have equivalents in Spanish and Catalan, so their utterances can be understood very well. However, they make some errors. Regarding the consonants, they aspirate the H, they say house instead of house. They also commit epenthesis, that is, say a school instead of school, and word final voice plosives, they put a T instead of a D, like foot instead of foot, or a K instead of a G, like back instead of bag.
The differences between the phonetic systems of the language can also cause some phonology mistakes for vowel sounds, especially because each Catalan or Spanish vowel has more than one equivalent in English. For example, participant 1 pronounces the word tu as tu with the Spanish or Catalan U, and participant 2 pronounces the word mother as moder with the Spanish O and E. We can also see that participant 2 makes an effort to have an accurate pronunciation, which indicates a certain level of phonological awareness. At the suprasegmental level, both participants have a very good intonation while they narrate the whole story, with an adequate variation of the pitch, especially in questions and exclamations.
Secondly, in the morphosyntax section, we have analyzed the morphology and syntax of their speech. In terms of morphology, both participants use functional words to connect the different parts of the sentence. And regarding the inflectional morphemes and following the crash and summary of second language grammatical morpheme acquisition sequence, both participants know how to use the verb to be as a copulative verb. For example, the mother is very angry. There's an agreement with the third person. Also, the participant 2 can build the irregular past of some verbs. He puts the S in the third person singular form, and he also uses the possessive S. So he's probably in a fourth phase, whereas the participant 1 is not able to do this, so he just uses the simplest structure of present simple, like the father see the food. And both participants do not use derivation to form a new word. The only word that has a derivational morpheme is finally, with the suffix ly, that converts the adjective final into an adverb. But they will probably have learned it as a chunk, as a whole. And also the participant 1 says the word disapparate. This word has a correct use of the negative prefix this, but he makes the hypothesis that the word ends with a suffixate, which is a word coinage. Nevertheless, although he is wrong, he uses a good strategy since he probably has heard that many words in English end with this suffix.
As for the syntax part, both participants have a clear understanding of the word order grammatical rules in sentences, that is, subject plus verb plus complements, and adjectives going before the noun. And they make very few occasional mistakes related to grammar and L1, such as subject omission and adjectives going after the noun, which is common in both Catalan and Spanish. They are also able to make compound and complex sentences very competently, but participant 2 does use more connectors for compound sentences than participant 1. Participants tend to commit errors only when they use more difficult structures that they don't know about and require specific components and prepositions. For example, participant 1 says forgive he directly translated from L1 perdonarli, when he requires the structure to give it to him, so that would be an error. Both participants can also make negative sentences, but participant 2 is more advanced because the auxiliary verb is marked for tense, person, and number in every occasion. And finally, participant 1 doesn't make any questions, so we don't have information about that, but participant 2 does, and he seems to be at stage 5 because he can introduce the clause with a question word, and the auxiliary verb and the verb are used adequately.
Regarding the semantics section, it is true that the vocabulary used by participant 2 is more complex than the one used by participant 1. This aspect could be directly related to the participant's age, as participant 2 is much older than participant 1, and as a consequence, he knows more words in his L1 than participant 1, and this aspect is transferred to the use of L2 that participants do regarding vocabulary. In addition, participant 1 makes no use at all of his L1, while participant 2 makes use of his L1 at some points, for example when he says s'ha perdut, ano. It must be pointed out that participant 2 shows a preference for saying those words he's intending to say in English before switching to his L1, even he is struggling with these words. In addition, participant 1 makes use of invented words at some points, for example when he says disapparate. In this particular case, this participant had previously realized that there are many English words that are created by adding the suffix ate. As a consequence, although the word disapparate is not correct, he has applied this rule in a correct way.
Regarding pragmatics, we have focused on the different text properties. Firstly, both participants adequate their speech to the context they are given. That means that they convey the message they are supposed to transmit, taking into account the picture narrative, and moreover, they use the correct language register they are supposed to in terms of formality. Then both speeches are coherent because the story the participants tell makes sense and has a continuity. And to do so, they start explaining the picture narrative from the beginning until the end, taking into account the different represented situations. And they also follow a linear process when speaking, helping the audience understand what's happening. For example, participant 1 uses form-like speech such as one day, in the moment, or finally. We've also I realized that both speeches are cohesive, meaning that the participants connect the different words, sentences, and ideas with connectors that allow the story to be understandable and rich in terms of language communication competence. For example, participant 1 uses words such as so and but, because, when, and finally, depending on the ideas he wants to highlight and connect in order for the story to make sense. Regarding communication strategies, there is a clear use of the formulaic speech in the case of participant 1, as he uses chunks such as one day, finally, or in the moment. Then he also uses a little translation such as desaparate or to the direction of his son. In the first case, he thought of the Catalan word desaparèixer or the Spanish one desaparecer and tried to create the corresponding word in English. And in the second case, he thought of the Catalan structure and direcció al seu fill, or the Spanish one en dirección a su hijo, and tried to copy this structure word by word.
To finish with, participant 2 makes use of formulaic speech and chunks. For example, he introduces expressions such as, oh my god, I don't know, or I think. Finally, language switch is detected when he tries to explain himself better. For example, he says, s'ha perdut, ano, after saying the same thing in English, I forgot it in this case.
After working on this research, we have reached some conclusions. First, we have identified similarities with the socio-cultural perspective to second language acquisition, which frames learning as a result of social interactions and sees language as a manifestation of thinking. The background of each participant helps us understand the characteristics of their interlanguage. On the one hand, participant 1 is a younger learner and uses rather basic language structures and daily life vocabulary, which is what primary students learn about at school.
On the other hand, participant 2 is an older learner with experience of English at work, so he has learned complex structures and vocabulary, and he's a perfect example that it is never too late to learn a new language, which is relatable to the critical period hypothesis, because he has an excellent learning process and an impressive command of interlanguage. And motivation also seems to be a crucial factor in him. And finally, we would like to conclude that we have been able to comprehend the order in which we learn a foreign language and understand better the errors and mistakes we commit. And for all this, we would like to create communicative situations where students have to produce messages in this foreign language instead of doing repetitive and decontextualized grammar exercises.
These are the references of our project. Thank you very much for your attention.
Bye!